Where are they now? And our I call this guy a triple play sports contributor because Mr. Van Shea Iven has been on these airways many times over the last couple of years. Oklahoma State guy, background. But I wanted to bring you on. First of all, I want to ask you this. You heard the Open. You probably know a lot of those guys that win the Open that we've had on there, right? Houston Nutt,
Absolutely.
Eddie Sutton. Yeah.
Yeah, and that makes me think, well, why in the world am I on here listening to all those people that you've got on the promo? That's a great group.
Let me tell you, I get that a lot from, what are you having me on it? Well, because we just want to keep adding to the greatness is what we want to do. But having you on, this is obviously where every high school football is nudging, if you will, its way toward doing something here this weekend. You got 0-week games that were there and not there, but next week is the fall. You got some scrimmages. What's the feeling at the association? Is it I think we're going to play, but I'm not 100% sure feeling?
It's day by day. There's one day that we think things look pretty good, and the next day, you get a few phone calls and you're crossing your fingers and holding your breath a little more. And we've sent out several polls or several surveys to the member schools to get their input and see what they want to do. And the overwhelming majority wanted to push forward and continue going, and they wanted control to make their own decisions at their school of which sports they would play or which ones they wouldn't. And we put together some guidelines to help them, and those guidelines change. They change weekly, probably. I don't know if they don't change daily, but they change weekly with some new input and advice. And some of the schools take them as is, some take them and add to it, and some take them and subtract a little bit, and which is fine. Anything that fits your community, and that's what the superintendents and principals and athletic directors, they know their community better than we do when there's 480 some schools that are OSSAA member schools. But we've all, when I say we all, it's every school has our fingers crossed, and the association has our fingers crossed that things go well. And we're in constant contact with other states, talking to them daily, finding out what's going on and how they're doing. And Utah is one state that has started, and they started 2 weeks ago. So they've already had 2 weeks of games and going to week 3 this week, and have had no major outbreaks. So that's very encouraging. With football, I'm talking. They've gone for two weeks of games and now into week 3, and we've been playing fall baseball and fast pitch softball and volleyball and cross country, and some schools have had some outbreaks, and others have gotten through pretty good. So it's hit and miss right now. We're keeping our fingers crossed though, and hoping that the student athletes get a chance to compete and get back out onto the playing fields and have some normalcy about their life again.
Despite the fact that the school districts have their own path to walk, they set their own parameters. In a worst-case scenario, does the association still have the ability to come in and say, fellas and ladies, this is not looking good this week, so we might have to shut it down for a week? Yes, the association does, to answer your question. In the short answer, yes.
I don't know if the association would do it for the entire state, for every sport, it may be more so. If we had to come in and do that, I think it would be pretty bad. Yeah. Not the decision. I think the cases would have to be pretty bad, and the numbers would have to be worse, and that might be a decision that would come from the state capitol or the state health department or the state superintendent, I think, before, it would be a decision that might come out of one of those offices. But we would love to play as long as we're being told that it's going to be safe. And safe can be looked at many different ways. It's safe in one person's eyes may not be the same definition as someone else's, but we're not gonna let kids play if if the risk is extremely high. But we're talking with state health department and different people every day, and doctors, and we're talking to the governor's office, and we just keep getting feedback that that with the numbers the way they are and the kids that are out there participating, and the way that the summer programs went, and the non-school programs, the AAU basketball and Little League baseball and fast pitch softball in the summer, and soccer, and the way that all those went and made it through, that it would be a good idea to go ahead. There's other things involved too with kids who are sitting out, and depression that's starting to come in with some of the kids, and things that they're going through, that they need to get back to school, and they need to get back to some athletics, and it's and we continue to send out our survey, and the overwhelming response just keeps coming back that we need to keep pushing forward and allow the local school districts to have as much input and say as possible. And if you look at the surveys, I mean, it's overwhelming, the number of people that want to continue moving forward and continue to play. And as of now, that's the plan. Now, that could change, and when the reports come out, I mean, we wait daily to see the numbers and see the hot spots in the state, and see all the trends that go up and trends that even come down in some parts. So that could change daily, but as of now, we're moving forward and keeping our fingers crossed, and hope we get some kids back out on the fields and enjoying themselves again.
I would think the frustration would have to come in, and it's good frustration and bad frustration, and that they're parts of the state of Oklahoma. I mean, I don't think that they've been virus-free, but for all intents and purposes, they've had negligible impact. Whereas if you get to the city areas, obviously the numbers are going to go up because of the density of population. So you can't really ever make a blanket statement, right, that would cover everybody, and that has to be a little frustrating, I would think. Well,
and we've even looked at it. I mean, we have morning meetings that could go on all day. We shut them off at 9. We start in the 6 o'clock hour, and we shut them off at 9 every day, because it would go on forever. Mm-hmm. But we have plans for if the entire fall gets in and winter gets delayed. We have plans if winter gets shut or fall gets shut down and we need to move things back a couple weeks. We have plans moving all the way to the second semester. We have plans where, A and B fast pitch softball, if you look where those schools are located, there's a pretty decent chance that 90-some%, if not more, of those schools are going to get their whole season in and the playoffs. Mm-hmm. But if you look at 5A and 6A fast pitch softball, where those schools are located, it may be tougher for some of those schools to get an entire season in, or it might be football might be a better example of that. When you look at 8-man in Class A and 2A schools, then there's just not many of those in the Oklahoma City and Tulsa area. And then you come to the 6A schools, and the majority of the 6A schools are in the Oklahoma City and Tulsa area, with the exception of the Stillwaters, Enids, Ponca cities, and everyone else, I believe, is in the area. So it is a not necessarily a regional deal, but it's once you get outside of the city area. I've been several places this summer and go to my hometown of Pond Creek, and they've been very fortunate so far, and they went forever without anything in town, without a single case, and they've had a few now. But in Pond Creek, the feel is totally different than when I go to Enid. Mm-hmm. Enid's a little different than Pond Creek, and then when I come from Enid to Oklahoma City, then it's a totally different feel again with the way people are handling it. And I'm not saying Pond Creek's doing anything wrong, because they haven't had any cases, and they're still, the swimming pool wasn't open in town this summer, and they've taken steps and measures to be safe, but it's just a different feel when you don't know anyone that's had it, or you don't see anyone that has been sent home from work, or you don't know someone who's in the hospital or has passed away. So it's just a little different feel depending on where you are in the state.
I'm sure you have 100 models that you've been referring to that you could apply to anything here, but What happens if you be doing everything right at School A, okay, and you've kept your protocols have kept the numbers down. Now you're scheduled to play School B, and for some reason School B's numbers were high that particular week, and all of a sudden somebody cancels that game. What do you do with that?
Well, and you said School A is doing everything right. School B may be doing everything right.
True.
And still have cases that come up. It could be just tough luck or something, even by doing stuff right. But in years past, in a normal year, if someone canceled a district contest, a district game, which like a district football game, that helps determine playoff seeding, if someone had canceled in years past, it's a forfeit. And then that team that canceled would not be allowed to go to the playoffs.
Okay.
This year is different. So this year, if a team cancels, we're going to give them the opportunity to try to make it up, depending on when it is in their schedule or how many weeks they go. And if for some reason they can't make it up, if School A has to cancel early and School B wanted to play and they reschedule, then School B may have a problem and can't play, and School A wants to. So if they just can't get it in, it won't go down as a forfeit for either team, and neither team will be eliminated from the playoffs. For that district, then we would go to percentages.
Okay.
To just one team may be, this probably won't happen, but if one team's 3-1 and another team's 6-2, they would have the same percentage of points. So then we have several tiebreakers in place, but no one would be eliminated based on canceling a game because of the coronavirus.
Do you guys have any say-so in the apportionment of fans, or is that still left up to each district? Regular
season will be each district, and that could be different for the two teams that are playing.
Right.
Let's say, and I don't know what Stillwater's doing, but let's say Stillwater's playing Enid. Stillwater may say, we're going to allow full capacity and no mask. But if the game was at Enid might be saying, we're allowing, 50% capacity and mask.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next week, they may go to Ponca City, and Ponca City may be saying, we're allowing no fans. And you just have to watch it on the live stream.
Right.
So it's a local school district decision, and the home team is the one that gets to decide. Now, once the playoffs come, then that would be an OSSAA decision with input from the school. That if it's a first or second round game and it's played at a home school, then it'll be an OSSAA decision how we're going to do it. Once we get to neutral site, then a lot of those, are on college campuses, and we would have to work out with them how they want to do it as well, because our plan may not be exactly like how their plan would be. And our plan right now is, like we've said, our plan right now is plan A, B, C, and D.
Along that line, how did the UCO, and I don't want to say an experiment, but how did the UCO experience work out?
Oh, it was fantastic. It was just fantastic. Everyone matters in their opinion and how they felt it went, but the ones that matter the most are the coaches and the kids and the schools involved, and then the Football Coaches Association, because they're the ones that help us with their sport. And the Football Coaches Association had a whole level in the press box to themselves with, I don't know how many TVs were in there, 4 or 5 TVs and chair backs and a little concession stand that they had brought in some drinks and stuff for them, and it wasn't for free that they were drinking up there, and so the Coaches Association loved it. I did not hear anything negative from the days of the game, leading up to the game, or after the game. No phone call into our office that I received, and I receive a lot of them, from anyone with the school that had anything negative to say. The coaches loved it, the kids loved it, the fans, the majority of the fans liked it, where they could stay and watch several games at the same site. It was just leading into it. The only concern we had, when you get 3 games into one day, that means somebody's going to have to play really early and somebody's going to have to play fairly late.
Sure.
Now, the fairly late isn't that big of a deal because they usually play pretty late anyway, a 7 or 7:30 kickoff. And I think we may have had, I don't know if we had an 8 o'clock kickoff, or we were just right there where they normally are. But the early kickoff was the one that we were worried about the most. And I believe that game was Weatherford and Poto, and it might have been one of the best crowds that we had based on the size of the schools and everything. I mean, both towns showed up, and neither one of them had a thing to say about it. But, you know, it's always easy when you're playing in a state championship game, you're still pretty excited.
Yeah.
So,
well, you should be.
As a coach, if they told you at the start of the year you're going to be in the state finals, you're probably going to say, we'll go play it in Galveston if you need us to.
Well, maybe not this week in Galveston, but still.
No, not this week. That's true. That was a bad example there. But it was a home run, for lack of a better term, for the wrong sport. But it was a home run for UCO, for us, and for the kids and coaches that were involved. It was a lot of fun. I hope we get an opportunity to do something like that again in the future. And UCO was great, but, I mean, OSU was great when we used to have it there, too.
Sure, uh-huh.
I'm not saying that wasn't a home run either, because that was fantastic when we had it there.
Last couple of things before we cut you loose. How will football look different to fans who go out right now to watch a high school game? What will they see different in terms of this pandemic and what you guys have instructed the schools to have to do?
Well, ours are just suggestions, just guidelines at this point until they get to the playoffs. You know, if you go to a game in Pond Creek, it's going to look different than a game at Putnam City this week. You know, I think, and I haven't gone in and looked at the spreadsheet that we have recently, but at one time I had heard that the Putnam City schools weren't going to allow anything.
That's what I heard. Yes.
Okay, so I don't know if game or it changed, but at Pond Creek, you know, Pond Creek probably won't look much different. I just say Pond Creek. Any of the smaller schools outside of the city areas probably won't look much different than they did last year, to be real honest with you. Now, we have a few rules that we've changed. The coaches' boxes, I believe, are going to the 10-yard line.
Okay.
To give an opportunity to social distance a little more on the sidelines. Whether they do or not, they'll have the opportunity. So we're spreading that out. There's been a few referees that have called in and said, now you're telling me that coach that I used to be able to get rid of, he's going to be able to follow me all the way down to the 10. But that's just a few things.
What about masks?
Regular season, that's, you know, local school decision. I would say if the playoffs were starting today, my guess is that masks would be required for the playoffs. I kind of have a little leeway for the media, and my suggestion was I would want masks in the press box for the media, you know, enclosed in a tighter area, and we're going to kind of limit the numbers up there, and we're doing some different things. Post-game, you know, for the state championships, we're not going to allow the media to get around the kids after the game, so we'll do Zoom post-game press conferences, and we're going to have some areas on the sideline where the media have to stay, and we're going to maybe have some boxes marked off where there's only one photographer in each area. We'd even talked about, for the media, just having a couple of still photographers hired, and they take pictures for everybody.
Yeah.
You know, just and provide them free of charge, put them on a website, and for the schools, for the newspapers, for whoever needs them. And we've talked about several different things like that for radio broadcast, maybe just one or two people just doing it and having everybody pick up those stations, or all of it's still a work in progress. But hopefully the experience of once you get there, whether you've got a mask on or not, whether you're sitting a little bit farther away from some people that you usually sit next to, hopefully the experience of getting back out and about and getting to see your son play. And I think at this point we're still going to be able to, which could all change, but at this point we're still going to be able to allow some cheerleaders down on the field. So getting to see them cheer and the teams play, and hopefully just getting out will be a nice change from what we've been used to the last 6 months, and we'll slowly work our way back to the way we used to know high school football.
Last thing, we'd be remiss if we didn't point this out. There's another Iven who's been a very busy fella here up here the last 2 or 3 months. I think you know him pretty well, don't you?
I do. You know, I always said my dad worked harder before 6 in the morning than I did all week physically, because he was a farmer and had wheat and hay and sheep and cattle, and I always said he worked harder before 6 in the morning on Monday than I did all week, and he did physically. And my brother, his work may not be physical like Dad's was, but I'm telling you, the hours that he has put in since the Big 12 tournament in Kansas City, there hadn't been a day off. And I mean, there's been times that I will call and his wife will say, I'll have him call you right back, and it might be 2 days before I hear something back. And I mean, I think he has spoken to every team doctor in every one of the schools in the Power 5 conferences, several other conferences, talked to NBA, Major League Baseball, NFL doctors, just anybody and everybody that you can imagine. He's been on the phone with them, and I know that he's been on the phone with a lot of the student athletes in Stillwater, with a lot of their families too. Because I walked in one day, came up to Stillwater and walked into the house, and I heard him say, Mr. So-and-so, and I can't even remember who it was or what sport it was. But he was talking to one of the parents and just explaining some stuff to them. But it's, we've reached out to him at the OSSAA. We had him come down to our office and give us one of, I told him if he could talk to us for about 15 minutes, and I think it ended up being closer to 2 hours that we kept him in there. But I mean, just the knowledge that he has gathered through all this, and all the people that he's talked to, and the input, and sometimes I think, well, why would you do that? Why would you call that person? Why would you do that? But he just keeps saying, it's checks and balances. Just because I think something might be right, I'm going to check and see what this doctor and that one and this conference and these people, because you can never have too much information, and no one has all the information on this. But he is constantly learning and getting as much information as he can. And I can tell you, whatever he is telling the coaches in Stillwater at Oklahoma State, it's in the best interest of those student athletes. I can promise you that.
I used to see him briefly at church, and since gone long distance at the church, I haven't been there in a while, just doing the online thing. But I know you could tell he was just coming from work and going right back to work again. I mean, it was like, I'm going to take an hour here and then I'm going to go right back to it. But he's been a godsend, no question about that. And I think he won't take any credit, as you well know. But
he wouldn't.
But he is responsible mainly for the rather low numbers that we've had at Oklahoma State in all sports since the kids came back. And I don't think that's a coincidence. I think it's pre-planning.
Well, he's had a good plan. I can tell you that much. There's, Oklahoma State was pretty much the guinea pig, because they were the first ones, I believe, that brought a majority of the student athletes back, or I don't know if it was the majority, but brought back football, and then I don't even know who came next or which sports, and I don't know which ones are there now. When we talk, it is 99% of the time it's about mom, or it's about my kids or his kids.
Right.
Rarely do we talk about football or basketball or anything going on at OSU, but But Oklahoma State was one of the first schools back, because I know that you said that these other doctors are reaching out, or were at the time, and saying, okay, we're coming back in 3 weeks, and we're coming back in a month, we're coming back in 2 weeks. What'd you do here? How'd you do this? What's going on with that? How are your numbers here? And they're trading information, because if Oklahoma State has great numbers, that's fantastic. But if Kansas State, TCU, and Texas Tech don't, well, that doesn't do OSU much good for a football season.
Right.
So they're trading information and working together, and it's nothing like I'm sure he ever dreamed he'd be in the middle of when he got into being a team doctor, probably 35 years ago.
Right.
Nothing like he dreamed he would be doing for a university, but he would not take any credit, but I will definitely brag on him. The hours that he's put in and the game plan that he's put together has been pretty impressive.
I would say there's a lot of people who would say, I never signed up for this. And you can go, you can go in a lot of different directions. Hey, Van Shea, we can go on for hours. We're not going to do that. I appreciate it. You got to get yourself to practice, get your baseball and football practice here soon. So you got to get your kids out there. You don't want to be late. You want to be the reason they're late. And I can't write you a note, so that won't make any difference to the coach, I'm sure. But anyway, I do appreciate you joining us. Great info, and we'll try to catch up with you halfway through the season and see if it's going the way we think it's going to go.
Well, thanks for having me on. Keep your fingers crossed. Always good talking to you, Tom.
All right, buddy. I appreciate your time. That's Van Shea Iven. Boy, he's